I'm Alma Angeles and you're watching Eagle News International. Good evening to you, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone watching the news. Here are now the headlines.
New Delhi hospitals issued desperate appeals for oxygen, and 13 COVID-19 patients die in a fire as India's healthcare system buckles under a new wave of infections.
Japan announced a new virus state of emergency in Tokyo and the 3 other regions on Friday as the country battles surging infections just 3 months before the Olympic opening ceremony.
Indonesia's desperate search for missing submarine and its crew of 53 honed in on a signal from an unidentified object on Friday, with just hours to go before the stricken vessel's oxygen reserves ran out.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy to be back here.
And if you're tired of hearing all of these depressing news about the pandemic, well, we will share with you a very encouraging interview we had earlier with His Excellency Rafael Harpaz, Ambassador of the Embassy of Israel in the Philippines.
The world in vaccinations. We are like a mini laboratory.
First to India, where the first train, dubbed the Oxygen Express, carrying tankers of liquid medical oxygen, leaves for the badly hit state of Maharashtra in India amid severe shortages in hospitals for COVID-19 patients. Take a look. Delhi hospitals as well issued desperate appeals for oxygen on Friday, and 13 COVID patients died in a fire as India's healthcare system is now buckling under a new wave of infections. The surge in cases blamed on a new virus variant and the government allowing super spreader public events to go ahead saw another 330,000 new infections and 2,000 deaths reported in the past 24 hours. The latest in a string of fires at hospitals broke out on the outskirts of Mumbai early on Friday morning, and it has since been put out and the cause was still being investigated. India's healthcare system has long suffered from underfunding, and the new COVID outbreak has seen critical shortages in oxygen, drugs, and hospital beds, sparking desperate pleas for help. This mistaken belief led the government to lower its guard, allowing most activity to return almost to normal, including weddings and permitting spectators at cricket matches. The vast Kumbh Mela festival, one of the world's biggest religious gatherings, held in the city of Haridwar between January and this week, attracted an estimated 25 million pilgrims, mostly without masks or social distancing. Several state elections have also seen big campaign rallies, including one by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Kolkata, and that drew an estimated crowd of 800,000. Earlier this week, 22 COVID-19 patients died at another hospital in the same state of Maharashtra when the oxygen supply to their ventilators was disrupted by a leak. India has recorded more than 4 million infections this month, dashing hopes at the start of the year that it may have seen the worst of the pandemic.
आपको बाकायदा पेशेंट भी मिल जाएंगे सामने मतलब पेशेंट के घर वाले
In other news, Japan has imposed a state of emergency in 4 prefectures, and we have Dennis Liu to give us the details. Dennis, tell us more.
Yes, CJ, Japan's imposed a state of emergency over the coronavirus in Tokyo and 3 other regions on Friday, exactly 3 months before the Olympic opening ceremony as it battles a surge of infections. The measures will be stricter than Japan's last state of emergency, imposed in parts of the country from January, but still far short of the harsh lockdowns seen in some parts of the world. Authorities are asking businesses serving alcohol to shut or stop serving between April 25th and May 11th. and also close major commercial facilities such as shopping malls. The official declaration will cover Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, and Hyogo regions initially. Previous emergencies have been expanded to other areas after being announced, and experts say the measures may be extended if the spread of the coronavirus continues. Local media said the measure, which will coincide with the Golden Week holiday that is Japan's busiest travel period of the year, could involve cutting some train and bus services to discourage movement. Spectators are also likely to be barred from sports events, though they can continue behind closed doors. Although the measures are expected to begin Sunday, Tokyo Governor Yuriko Koike urged residents to start taking precautions immediately, including avoiding drinking in the street after bars and restaurants close early. She even urged businesses to turn their lights off in the evenings to encourage people to stay away. Tokyo on Friday logged 759 cases, while Osaka recorded 1,162 new infections, slightly down on record numbers earlier in the week. Authorities in Osaka have said health facilities there are already overwhelmed and beds for seriously ill patients are running short. Japan's vaccine program is moving slowly meanwhile, with just over 1.5 million people given a first shot and only around 827,000 fully vaccinated. Only the Pfizer vaccine has so far been approved, CJ, and approvals for the Moderna and AstraZeneca formulas are not expected before May at the earliest. Taro Kono, the minister in charge of Japan's vaccine rollout, said requests from local authorities for vaccine doses from May 10th had exceeded planned supply. Back to you, CJ.
Thank you so much, Dennis, for your updates there. Please keep us posted, especially now that we're getting closer to the Olympics. We're hoping for the best for everyone there in Japan. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you so much, CJ, reporting live from Tokyo, Japan. This is Dennis Lu. We live in interesting times.
To Myanmar now, where the Yangon protesters are demanding that ASEAN leaders stand with the Myanmar people. This ahead of the ASEAN summit to be held tomorrow. It will be attended by junta leader Min Aung Hlaing. Our EBC correspondent Cristel Di Marugat is following the developments from Thailand. Hello, Cristel.
Good evening, Alma, and to all our viewers. Yes, protesters marched through downtown Yangon to demand that ASEAN leaders stand with Myanmar people ahead of a weekend ASEAN summit attended by junta leader Min Aung Hlaing. Coup leader Min Aung Hlaing is set to take part Saturday in a summit of regional leaders as part of a 10-country association of Southeast Asian nations, or ASEAN, to address Myanmar's mounting crisis. The meeting of ASEAN leaders and foreign ministers has drawn widespread criticism from activists, human rights groups, and protesters for including the military regime. The meeting is also a test for ASEAN, which traditionally refrain from interfering in the internal affairs of a member state and operates by consensus. In commercial hub Yangon, where the anti-coup movement had laid low in recent weeks due to fear of crackdowns, protesters returned to the streets, flashing three fingers, salutes of resistance. The protesters came from different Yangon townships, some carrying signs that read, ASEAN, please stand with Myanmar people, and ASEAN, do you need more blood to make the right decision? Also angered by the bloc's invitation to Min Aung Hlaing was the so-called National Unity Government, a group of outside Myanmar lawmakers attempting to run a shadow administration. On Thursday, they called on Interpol to arrest the senior general. The same day, Myanmar's state media announced that the lawmakers in hiding were wanted for the high treason. The junta has justified the push by alleging electoral fraud in November's election, which Suu Kyi's party had won in a landslide. The US, European Union, and Britain have already imposed sanctions on top military brass, as well as on some army-linked businesses. Before the coup, Min Aung Hlaing was already facing international sanctions over his army's role in Rohingya crisis. About 750,000 of the Muslim minority groups fled Myanmar in 2017, following a brutal military crackdown. The country has been in turmoil since February 1, when the military ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi in a lightning coup, using violence for lethal force to quell a nationwide uprising. Security forces have killed at least 739 people in near daily crackdowns, according to a local monitoring group. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you, Crystal, for your updates. Looking forward to more updates as we follow this developing story. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alma. Stay safe. Reporting from the ASEAN Bureau, this is Crystal Nicole Di Marucot, and we live in interesting times.
To Indonesia now, where there is a desperate search for a missing submarine and its crew of 53 honed in on a signal from an unidentified object Friday, with just hours to go before the stricken vessel's oxygen reserves ran out. Ships equipped with specialized tracking equipment were deployed in the hope that the object could be the Kri Nanggala 402, which was equipped with oxygen reserves that could last until early Saturday. Take a look.
Apabila kondisi blackout seperti sekarang ini, kalau diperkirakan blackout itu mampu 72 jam, jadi kurang lebih 3 hari. Sehingga kalau kemarin saat hilang kontak jam 3, hingga nanti bisa sampai hari Sabtu jam 3, sehingga 72 jam. Ya, mudah-mudahan ini sebelum ini dapat segera ditemukan.
Late Thursday, the military said it picked up signs of an object with high magnetism at a depth of between 50 and 100 meters, or about 165 and 330 feet. Despite hopes for a miracle, an oil spill spotted where the submarine was thought to have submerged pointed to possible fuel tank damage, fanning fears of a deadly disaster. There are also concerns that the submarine could have sunk to depths believed to be as much as 700 meters or 2,300 feet, well below what it was built to withstand. The German-built vessel was scheduled to conduct live torpedo exercises when it asked for permission to dive. It lost contact shortly after. On Thursday, the U.S. military said it would send airborne teams to help in the search, while Australia said 2 ships were on their way to assist. Neighboring Singapore and Malaysia have already dispatched ships that are expected to arrive at the weekend, including the city-state's MV Swift Rescue, a submarine rescue vessel. India said Thursday it had sent a ship to assist in the hunt.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel has signed an agreement with pharmaceutical giant Pfizer, enabling the Jewish state to obtain millions more doses of vaccines. Nearly 5 million Israelis, or over 500,000, half the population, has received 2 doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, according to statistics published by Israel's health ministry. Let's take a look.
אני מגיע לכאן מדיון עם שר הבריאות ועם ראשי מערכת הבריאות. אחרי שסיכמתי עם ראשי פייזר ומודרנה על אספקה נוספת של 16 מיליון חיסונים נוספים לאזרחי ישראל, אנחנו נערכים למבצע חיסונים נוסף בעוד כ6 חודשים. אז תכינו את הכתפיים, את השרירים, מי שרוצה, וגם את הילדים, משום שהערכה שלנו שעד אז גם יהיו חיסונים מאושרים לילדים.
Israel has since late December undertaken the most rapid per capita vaccination campaign in the world. It began to emerge from a 3rd lockdown in early February. The requirement to wear a mask in public was already lifted on Sunday. And the vaccination of close to 5 million people has sent Israel's coronavirus caseload tumbling from some 10,000 new infections per day as recently as mid-January to around 200 cases a day only. Now that has allowed the reopening of schools, bars, restaurants, and other indoor gatherings, although masks are still required in indoor public spaces. In a related story, now, if you're tired of hearing all these depressing news about the pandemic, I'd like to share with you a very encouraging interview we had earlier with His Excellency Rafael Harpaz, Ambassador of the Embassy of Israel in the Philippines. Let's listen in.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy to be back with you here, Alma. It's a tough year for all of us. When it started in February, already in Israel in February, January last year, 2020. It's vaccinations. It's vaccination. Israel is the leading country in the world in vaccinations. We are like a mini laboratory for Pfizer, 9.3 million people. So first we got the vaccinations. And the second is the HMO system in Israel. In Israel, we don't have private organizations that are getting the vaccines. You can't do it. It's done. We have 4 HMOs, because we have a national health insurance law. Each one of us is a member of one of the 4 big HMOs. And that's how the government distributed, and a little bit through the hospitals also. And then I was in Israel in December, and I received the first shot at my HMO. And immediately when you get the first shot, you need to wait 15 minutes to see if there are any immediate side effects. And you get the text message with the date for the second shot after 21 days. So everything is computerized. You receive the passport that you're being vaccinated. So the number of Israelis that are being vaccinated until now by the first shot is everything is Pfizer. In Israel, we have also Moderna. These are the 2 vaccines that we approved, but those that were vaccinated by Pfizer, 5.5 million Israelis were vaccinated in 2 shots, and 5 million Israelis were by the first shot, 5.5 million by the first shot, and approximately something like this. 5.5 million. Going backwards, 5.5 million Israelis received the first shot, and the second shot by 5 million Israelis. So don't forget, we are 9.3 million. Children under 16 can't be vaccinated. So we take away 2 million people. And then we have around 800,000 people that were sick already, and not all of them can be vaccinated. It has to be 90 days from the moment that you were sick that you can get a jab. So the bottom line is around 80% of the Israelis which are eligible receive the shot. This is the issue.
Wow, that's how fast were you able to vaccinate?
Very fast. From the moment we got the vaccines was early December. The first group was the first person to be the first 2 persons to get the vaccines was the Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Rivlin. Netanyahu in prime time television, live, because it's a role model. There were a lot of fake news. And then President Rivlin, it was so important because people have concerns all over the world to show we are giving you a role model. And they started having 60 plus and people with the previous illnesses and first responders. And after 1 month, now it's open to everyone. And actually, I'm happy. All those OFWs that goes every day to Israel, they come and they get the vaccines for free. And I'm so proud that 30,000 Filipinos, OFWs, and the students from Testia, and the Filipino embassy in Israel were vaccinated twice by Pfizer, by the government of Israel without any cost. I'm very proud of this.
Mm-hmm. So while other countries are still unsure of receiving their vaccine doses, you were able to achieve the vaccination timelines there in Israel, and even for Filipinos.
Yeah. I'm very proud. Yeah, and I think that, as what I understand, the reason that Pfizer looked at Israel because we have a very advanced system of medical health, and we have the HMOs, which are incredible. They can, collecting data. We are a laboratory. When I'm telling you now that, the vaccine Pfizer, we have tested it. Millions of Israelis have been vaccinated. It protects you 96%. 96% of those that were vaccinated, nothing. And among those that became sick, 95% after 2 shots of vaccine, 95% of them either are asymptomatic or very mild. Only 5% of them are severe cases. So we see the numbers of sick people in Israel dropping down dramatically. We have only 1,000 active sick people in Israel, and the number of those in severe situation, I think, is 166. What I checked before we started this interview. What we see that elderly people are not getting sick anymore. They are covered. The issue is the young ones, which are not yet vaccinated. So Israel is waiting for we are following the FDA recommendations, and we know that it will be discussed sometimes in May about the possibility of vaccinating age from 12 to 16. So we are ready, and if that will come, then Israel will open it to these ages, which is reduce it even more.
Mm-hmm. Other countries have limited vaccines only to their nationals, but you give vaccines.
For us, we give those that are in Israel, in Israel, like the OFW, those that are arriving to work in Israel, we are vaccinating them. It's part of first, they are our guests, they are in Israel, and also they are living in Israel, so we need to make sure that they won't transmit the virus. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the 30,000 Filipinos OFWs, because the most vulnerable community, especially the first few months, were the elderly Israelis. And the elderly Israelis are being taken care by the Filipinos. They are the caregivers. And they took, it was very hard. People, grandparents couldn't see their children and grandchildren in all this period. And the ones that took care of them were the Filipinos, and we are grateful. We are grateful for them. And immediately, now to Israel, now we are start opening it, but also during all this period, the only category that we really opened to enter to Israel, at least at the OFWs, that goes as caregivers. Now it's more open, and there are other categories which are, but this is very, very important, and we thank to them.
Mm-hmm. So, for example, Filipinos, they want to go to Israel, caregivers who go to Israel. What requirements do they need to have?
When you have to distinguish between OFWs and others. OFWs in Israel today with the Philippines is only caregivers. Mm. They need to do medical checks. There's a long process. It's the usual process that was before. When they come to Israel, they go to a quarantine. They do 2 tests, I think up to 10 tests, and get the vaccines, the 2 vaccines, and that's it. So about others, Israel is now start even to groups of tourists. They start doing it, but it's based first on mutual recognition of what we call a green passport. We offered it to the Filipino government that we will recognize Israel that Israelis can enter here with those that are vaccinated, and the same. It depends on which vaccines. We are, as I mentioned, Israel is only recognizing for the time being Pfizer and Moderna. So this is one of the options that will come. But slowly we start opening a little bit more, which the goal is by the end of May to start to open it to groups of tourists that will come in very strict medical schedule. It's complicated, whatever. But, we try that life will go on. Now, again, no need for masks outside, still inside. Schools are normally back. That's it. We are back. The schools were the most vulnerable one. And we were under 3 lockdowns. I was in Israel during a lockdown. It was quite a lockdown for 2 weeks. Aviation is starting. I'm happy that PAL is planning to start flying directly to Israel at the end of the year, because we believe that the Philippines also, it's very challenging here. Ups and downs, and this virus is very tricky for what we see. So I think these are the main issues. Get the vaccines, and I call all the Filipinos, when the vaccines will be available, go and be vaccinated.
Israel and Bahrain also reach
correct.
bilateral agreement for mutual recognition of vaccine passports.
Yeah, that's correct. That's the same one that we would like to reach with the Philippines when the government will be ready, and it's something we already offered several months ago. There are some criteria here. You need to have I said we are the vaccines that Israel is accepting today is Moderna and Pfizer for the time being, and there are other conditions for it, serological tests, whatever. But yes, it has to come. We need to go back to. We have also this bubble with Greece, with Cyprus that Israelis can come and the tourists can come. So there are ways to do it because we need to go on. Economy has to go back. We see the unemployment dropping in Israel. It's still a challenge, still a long way to go, but we're on the right track.
Mm-hmm. So this would be quarantine-free? Is this?
Yeah, quarantine-free. Probably you need to show that you are. For example, I'm vaccinated. Okay, I go back to Israel now. I don't need to have 1 day of quarantine. I need to do a test 3 days before I go, just to make sure. Clear, and that's it. You go to every. So it's better for the economy. Yeah.
So this is very encouraging news.
Yeah. You can. Yeah, you need to go. It's
travel. Yeah.
I can't hear you.
I said this is very encouraging news for a major country like Israel to forge back confidence in travel.
We need to do, and there is also you need to take some risks and manage risk management. It's part of it. You can decide that you lock completely, and but then people won't leave and people want to generate money. Our policy by the way, our policy of quarantine is different from other. I know here, for example, people are quarantined for 14 days. In Israel, you quarantine for 10 days if you are not vaccinated. And if you are vaccinated, you don't need the quarantine. And this is a major difference. But each country has its own challenges.
Mm-hmm. There's also an app that where you can go to museums and malls.
Yeah, it's the green passport. This is very important because you need to give incentives for people to get the vaccines. And again, we have a challenge. We have also in Israel, like elsewhere, people that are afraid, concerned, and a lot of fake news. So to go to a rock concert, to a basketball or soccer game, or to a museum, you need to, that's correct, if you have this green passport, it makes your life much easier. Mm-hmm. And I have a green passport, for example, in Israel, and then you just show it and you get in. The same for some hotels and others. You need to protect the people and you need to encourage people to be vaccinated. And if someone doesn't want to be vaccinated, unless he has a medical reason for it, well, he has to take responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice to Southeast Asian countries like ours to quell
I'm not in a position to give an advice to other countries, but I can tell the major issue is to vaccinate as many people as you can, and in addition to keep social distance as we do, and to find the right balance between the economy and the needs. But the issue is really the vaccinations. We saw the way that Israel beat the virus until now is the vaccinations, because it's very hard with social distance, and it was very hard. And we couldn't lock the skies in Israel. People come. By the way, our still challenge and our weakest point was the airport, because that's where the virus came from. But you need to. So you do those checks, people before they come. If they're vaccinated, well, no problem. If they're not vaccinated, what's the process? So you deal with it. And actually, we are open more and more now. More international flights. Big open and flights. You need to give this interface to be well, but you need to do the right medical checks to promote it. So that's why we are opening Israel for some tourist groups already at the end of May, which is very important for the tourism industry, which was almost killed by, at least not international tourists. Internal tourists is booming. Israelis, they can't go abroad, so they go inside Israel. So you see, in Jerusalem, to get a hotel in Easter was impossible during Passover, because all the Israelis were around. So there are good projections for the coming months to see when the season starts. Again, we are not living in an island. We are dependent on other countries and what the situation is there. But Israelis are eager to go back to the Philippines. I can see it in all the eager when the government will ease the restrictions on, and they are vaccinated. They're eager to go. They miss Palawan and Banaue and Boracay. They just want to go back. And the business community wants to go back. We see the increase, all of this. So also we hope that here things will balance and we respect all the decisions of the Filipino government, but they're just eager to come back here.
So what's the lesson to be learned from Israeli experience? How can Southeast Asian countries adapt to modern and science-based policies?
Yeah. Well, first, I think this pandemic also demonstrate some part of our weakness. What Israel has learned, that we need to strengthen our medical system. This is our lesson. We need to have more nurses and more doctors and more beds and more hospitals. I think then we are very, very good in responding fast. This is Israel always, but we saw that when it comes to the airport, we were more, it took us a time to realize what will be the change. And the issue is really, yes, we need to do long-term planning. And that's why we signed this agreement with Pfizer and Moderna this week to get 16 million vaccinations that actually we don't need them now. We just plan it. So what I say, what we try to do, it's hard, but we need to do some midterm planning. The other thing was how to assist, and was a major challenge for Israel, those people that lost their job. At the peak, at the height of it, when we had the biggest lockdown in Israel, our number of unemployment was around 40%. 40%, now it went down to 9%. So yes, the economy is well, but there are some people that lost their jobs. So the government and the Israeli policy opened its pockets, and there will be a government debt that we need to shoulder. There is enough to do, but I see now they are looking people in the high tech. I just saw that there are 13,000 jobs in the high tech industry that they are looking for people to work in high tech. So I think this is another element. We saw a lot of assistance. Israelis helping each other was very, very important. And we, in Israel, as a policy, assist other countries, including the Philippines. I was honored by myself to submit 7 or 8 batches of assistance, both to the Department of Education, to the DND, to the PNP, and to share our experience. So we did both of them at the same time. And there's one major lesson that we have learned, that to work distance working and distance learning. That actually you don't need to be in the office physically, and you can do your job. And in Israel, we have a very good internet connect. Everybody has computers at the home, so schools are going by Zoom. Yeah. And actually now the government, at least for the public sector, because now you can go back fully to work, but they do a trial now actually, which will be for 6 months, that one day you can work from home for the public sector, at government and other agencies, in order to save traffic in the roads, air pollution, and to see if it's working. There are some conditions. You have to show that you can work from home, accessibility, whatever. So they're going to try it, which is very interesting, because I think we learned the lesson that actually you can reduce the traffic in the streets. You go to Tel Aviv in the morning or Jerusalem, there's so much traffic. So maybe you can save one day a week. People will work, but from home, So I think this is a very important lesson, but you need the technology, whatever, and we are trying to adopt it. I hope it will last. That once when COVID will be over, they will say, okay, let's go back to the normal business. It's an opportunity for us.
Lastly, Mr. Ambassador, how are the Israeli and Philippine relations strengthened despite the dampening effects of this pandemic?
If there is one thing that makes me happy is that during this pandemic, Israel, most embassies in the world either stay the same or shrinked. The only embassy of Israel, the only one in the world that grown dramatically is the one in Manila. The only one. We opened for the first time in our history, our defense attaché office here. We opened in August. In September, we opened our first economic mission here. And also in September, I opened our first honorary consulate in Davao. Now, those events happen. If one of them will happen, it's a big news. All 3 of them, during the year of COVID, demonstrate the importance that Israel drove for the Philippines. And I'm very, very pleased with this. I'm also very, very happy that those very friendly relations that I think we're in the peak of our relations. And being ambassador here in this period is just amazing. And I'm happy that we could assist the Philippines and share our know-how about how to deal with COVID and to give some equipment and assistance. Is something that we're very, very, very happy. And you are, and I'm so pleased that we are enjoying the assistance of the Philippines OFWs in Israel, which is highly appreciated. That's why every day tens of them are going to Israel now. And it's good relations, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I just hope we can go back to normal business here as soon as possible. I know it's tough and challenging, but I know how resilient are the Filipino people, and I trust that the things will just get better.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for this
Thank you. A pleasure also, and I wish you stay safe.
Conversation.
Yeah, stay safe, all of you, and be healthy, and let's get together very soon.
Yes, soon. We are here to learn and share other countries' successes in stemming this pandemic. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you very much, Alma. Thank you all. Take care.
Definitely so much to learn from there. Eagle News will be right back. Please don't go away.
This portion is brought to you by Canriv Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel, hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation, and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Welcome back to Eagle News International. Here are the latest business news from Bobby Soriano. Bobby.
Good evening. U.S. markets have closed. Here are your latest business headlines. Markets moved sharply lower this afternoon after a report from Bloomberg that President Biden is planning to announce a much higher than expected capital gains tax increase. The report expects the president to announce a 39.6% capital gains tax rate, which was touted by the president during his campaign. However, this is in addition to an existing tax on investment income that would bring the total federal tax rate for wealthy investors to 43.4%, which is nearly double the current federal tax rate. The capital gains tax is a tax on returns over $1 million by individuals and corporations when they sell their investment assets that have been held for more than a year. The president's goal of raising taxes on the wealthy is to fund his American Family Plan that he looks to announce next week, which will expand family and child care services, as well as improvements to the country's infrastructure and clean energy initiatives. No official comment has been released by the president regarding the Bloomberg report, but the president's press secretary did note that the tax rate is still being finalized. Turning to a quick earnings recap for today, AT&T reported higher than expected earnings based on a healthy growth of its wireless and fiber optic internet customer bases, as well as an increase in HBO subscription revenue from its Warner Media division. Chip manufacturer Intel also reported higher than expected net income and plans by their new CEO to expand production capabilities to take advantage of the chip shortage caused by the pandemic. Meanwhile, the Labor Department reported that the number of Americans applying for unemployment aid fell last week to 547,000, the lowest point since the beginning of the pandemic and a sign of continued economic strength. All major U.S. indices closed in the red following the Bloomberg report on the capital gains tax. Reporting from New York, Bobby Soriano, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Thank you so much, Bobby. Meanwhile, the European Central Bank chief, Christine Lagarde, said the economic outlook in the Eurozone remains clouded by uncertainties because of the coronavirus pandemic, but an accelerating vaccination campaign should bring about a firm rebound in 2021. Take a look.
Well, the recovery in global demand and the sizable fiscal stimulus are supporting global and euro area activity, the near-term economic outlook remains clouded by uncertainty about the resurgence of the pandemic and the rollout of vaccination campaigns.
Lagarde on Thursday underlined the ECB's commitment to cheap money as the Eurozone remains mired in a coronavirus pandemic that has muddied the region's economic outlook. Lagarde said a vaccination campaign currently being ramped up after a stuttering start would likely underpin a firm rebound in economic activity in the course of 2021. But Eurozone economies will still need all the help they can get to return sustainably to the path of growth. As such, she repeated her plea for Eurozone governments to do their part, including by quickly getting a €750 billion EU coronavirus recovery fund operational.
Meanwhile, in a vote of confidence on the Philippine economy's coronavirus or COVID-19 recovery and growth prospects over the medium term, Japanese Debt Watcher Rating and Investment Information Inc. RNI has kept the country's investment-grade credit rating of BBB+ with a stable outlook. In a statement released on Thursday, RNI recognized the role of fiscal and monetary actions in providing a favorable outlook for the Philippines in the post-COVID period. It said, quote, the Philippines economy suffered a severe contraction due to the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, but is expected to recover primarily through aggressive public investment, which had driven the economy in the past several years. Fiscal and monetary policies will boost growth for some time, unquote. BBB+ is a notch away from the minimum rating within the A- territory ratings, while a stable outlook indicates absence of factors that may cause the rating to change over the short term. In response to the latest rating decision by RNI on the Philippines, Department of Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez said that in keeping its BBB+ credit rating with a stable outlook for the Philippines, RNI has apparently taken notice that although the global fight against the pandemic has proven to be a costly one, the country's strong macroeconomic fundamentals ahead of the pandemic have enabled the government to accelerate spending on urgent and necessary programs to save lives and keep the economy afloat. And we'll go for a short break. CJ and I will be back right after this.
Puso ko ay tunay kang nag-iisa. Ingatan mo itong pag-ibig na para lamang sa iyo sa habang panahon. Kaya ingatan mo ito natin.
Hello mga kaibigan, ako po si Chad Borja. Sana po abangan niyo ako bilang isang guest performer sa Letters and Music this Sunday, April 25, 1 to 2 p.m. dito lamang sa Net 25. Maraming salamat.
Welcome back to the news. U.S. President Joe Biden announces the creation of America's first ever international climate finance plan as he addresses a virtual climate summit convened by the White House on Earth Day. China's President Xi Jinping attended the summit on Thursday at the invitation of President Joe Biden in the first meeting between the two leaders since the advent of the new U.S. administration. Take a look.
This is a moral imperative, an economic imperative, a moment of peril, but also a moment of extraordinary possibilities. Time is short, but I believe we can do this. And I believe that we will do this. And our shared goal of mobilizing $100 billion per year in developing countries is critical for achieving that. It's an investment that's going to pay significant dividends for all of us. And to help meet that goal, the United States will double its by 2024, our annual public climate financing development to developing countries. In addition, today we are issuing America's first ever international climate finance plan. This plan represents our vision for financing the global climate response in a coordinated way. It lays out specific steps that federal agencies of the United States will take to increase both the quality and quantity of climate financing.
We will continue to prioritize ecological conservation and pursue a green and low-carbon path to development. China will strive to peak carbon dioxide emissions before 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality before 2060.
Climate change is a major threat to global growth, with perils ranging from declines in crop yields, extreme weather that devastates tourist economies, disease outbreaks, and other catastrophes that would sap productivity. The effects could reduce global gross domestic product by as much as 18% by 2050, compared to estimates without climate change, according to a report published Thursday by Swiss Re, one of the world's largest providers of reinsurance. China could lose 24% of GDP in the worst case scenario, the largest impact, while Europe could lose 11% and the United States around 10%, according to that report. The World Bank estimates that between 32 million and 132 million additional people could fall into extreme poverty by 2030 due to the effects of climate change.
Meanwhile, Spacex launched its third crew to the International Space Station an hour before sunrise on Friday, recycling a rocket and spacecraft for the first time. The Crew 2 mission, the first involving a European, blasted off from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida at 5:49 a.m. Eastern Time. Take a look.
3, 2, 1, 0. Mission. And liftoff. Godspeed, Endeavour and Crew 2.
Copy, 1 Alpha.
Endeavour launches once again. 4 astronauts from 3 countries on Crew 2, now making their way to the one and only International Space Station.
The Crew Dragon entered orbit a few minutes later and is racing to catch up with the ISS in around 23.5 hours. Now, earlier, astronauts Thomas Pesquet of France, American Shane Kimbrough, and Megan MacArthur and Japan's Akihiko Hoshide strode out in their suits to say goodbye to their families. And they then boarded the 3 white Teslas for the launch pad, a new tradition established by Spacex, whose owner, Elon Musk, also made an appearance. Now, the car's license plates read recycle, reuse, and reduce, in a nod to the fact that both the Falcon 9 booster and Crew Dragon capsule were deployed on previous missions. Flying on reused vehicles has been a key cost-saving goal of NASA's partnerships with private industry. It is the third time SpaceX will send humans to the ISS as part of its multi-billion-dollar contract with NASA under the Commercial Crew Program. The first mission launched last May and ended 9 years of American reliance on Russian rockets for rides to the ISS following the end of the Space Shuttle program. ESA will also be a key partner to the United States in the Artemis program to return to the moon, providing the power and propulsion component for the Orion spacecraft and critical elements of a planned lunar orbital station called Gateway. The Crew 2 team has around 100 experiments in the diary during their 6-month mission, and these include research into what are known as tissue chips, small models of human organs that are made up of different types of cells and used to study things like aging in the immune system, kidney function, and muscle loss. Another important element of the mission is upgrading the station's solar power system by installing new compact panels that roll open like a huge yoga mat. After launch, the Falcon 9 rocket will return to Earth for an upright vertical landing on a drone ship, and the Crew Dragon's capsule is scheduled to dock with the ISS at 5:10 a.m. Saturday local time, with hatch opening 2 hours later.
Mission and liftoff. Godspeed, Endeavour and Crew 2.
Copy, 1 Alpha.
Endeavour launches once again. 4 astronauts from 3 countries on Crew 2, now making their way to the one and only International Space Station. The vehicle is pitching downrange. 9 Merlin engines on the first stage, providing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Hearing good calls on first stage performance so far.
One last story for tonight's broadcast. The United Kingdom reports 32 more deaths. All of them suffered rare blood clots after taking the AstraZeneca jab. We have Nicole Salenga of our EBC UK Bureau with that story. Nicole.
A total of 168 people have suffered rare blood clots after taking the AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine in Britain, and 32 have died, the UK's medicine regulator said Thursday. The figures for clots, or thromboembolic events, run up to April 14, by when 21.2 million people had received first doses of the vaccine, according to the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, MHRA. It represents a rise of 10 deaths compared to the period up to April 5, and an additional 68 cases. On the basis of this ongoing review, the advice remains that the benefits of the vaccine outweigh the risks in the majority of people, the MHRA said. Acting on the regulator's advice, the UK government this month agreed to offer most people under 30 an alternative to the AstraZeneca coronavirus jab, if possible, due to concerns over blood clots. Of the 168 cases in the latest summary, cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, CVST, or blood clots in the brain, was reported in 77 cases with an average age of 47. A further 91 cases had other major thromboembolic events, along with low platelet counts with an average age of 55. Overall, 93 women and 75 men suffered clots after receiving the vaccine. I would expect the true number of cases per million doses of vaccine to become clear fairly soon as these reports stabilize, but it is already clear that it's going to remain a very rare event, University of Bristol pediatrics professor Adam Finn said. Britain has Europe's highest death toll from the COVID-19 pandemic, but since the mass vaccination drive began with the AstraZeneca jab in December, rates of infection, hospitalization, and death have plummeted. The coronavirus was no longer the leading cause of death in March, according to separate data released by the Office for National Statistics. It said that COVID-19 was the third leading cause of death in England last month, dropping from the top spot for the first time since October. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I am Nicole Salenga. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Nicole, for that report. Alma, I just want to go back to the pictures from the astronauts. That's a sleek-looking suit compared to the bulky ones that we know from before. Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. So please join us again tomorrow. I'm CJ Hero.
Yes, I'll see you back tomorrow, CJ. At the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.